What is going on? Ah! Hey! I think we maxed out on our time, and that's, yeah, because it was literally exactly 1 hour. Hi, Mark. It was literally exactly 1 hour, and I think that had an influence. Hey, Daria! So, yeah, we literally got to 1 hour. Mark's just joining back in, and I think that cut it off because it was exactly 1 hour on the dot since we started the live. Did you notice that, Mark? An hour in.
I didn't know. It went like that, yeah. Gone.
Gone.
Yeah.
We were just talking about mindful leadership. What were we just saying? That really confused me. It threw me for a spanner.
Well, I suppose the point is, you know, how do we actually get that change to take place is the question I was asking. I mean, that's where I think mindfulness meditation practice, you know, you talked about education. I mean, you know, it is, how do we stop ourselves continually reacting to a sense of need to achieve and sense of social threat and status when we all know probably that this doesn't work for us?
No.
How do we actually start to diffuse that social pattern of, you know, competing with each other rather than cooperating and looking after each other, you know, and making ourselves feel better? How do we actually change those things? So if you like, that's where things like mindfulness meditation practice can actually start to break those sort of destructive cycles. That's why I think it's important. Definitely. I'm not saying it's the only method. All sorts of things can do it. But, you know, I don't know, the vast majority of change management, sort of the money spent on change management implementation, it's just, well, you know, it just doesn't, I don't know, I know sort of anecdotally.
I teach change management, so I can tell you it's there in the literature. It's in the literature. It's in the literature that we need. So, for example, one of the modules I teach is called Developing an Enterprise Culture. The whole concept behind developing an enterprise culture is because people need to be given autonomy, they need to be given freedom to move around, they need to be able to know that if they communicate something, there is a chance that if that thing is meaningful, it will travel as far up as it needs to be traveled. It's all there. It's in the literature. It's there. I could tell you citations for days. The implementation is a whole different thing. It's non-existent. And I think it's because when people start off, they start off with, I guess, a false sense of identity, like you said, positioning themselves in the middle of these perspectives of other people, like you said, but they're not also understanding that their image of themselves is a reflection of the community around them. So they think, no, this is just me. They don't realize, no, the reason you do this is kind of like that. It's because of this and this and this. They don't see how they're connected. And so when they enter into the world of business and they, I guess, reach hurdles and struggles, they use that schema of past information to solve the problem. The one thing that they can't use is examples of good change management or good leadership in terms of mindfulness, because the community around it is still so small, right? Go on. There's a delay.
I came across a really fascinating article the other day. I think it was Harvard Business Review or the New Yorker, I think it was. And anyway, they were talking about one of the aspects that I'm using in this approach is understanding something called social baseline theory, which means that we all kind of share things. We think we share the idea. We think we have access to resources that are shared in the group. That's a natural capacity, and this is also true with ideas about how we think technology works or how we think things work. And this is how we start to create absolute complete illusions, and everybody has the same false belief. We all think it's true and we all think it works in that way, but the only way to start changing this is actually asking people to start to break down how those things they think work actually work. And the same goes for our own experience. And I mean, it goes back even to Socrates, who said, the unexamined life is not worth living. We believe we are X, Y, and Z. Let's actually look at that. Is that really true? And until we actually work out, look at that carefully, am I really like that, or are they really like that?
Exactly. No,
It's
and
just
most of the time it's not true. Once we take the time, we take the time to look at things, most of the time we find it's not true. And in the events where it is, we find that something might be accurate, but not in the way we were thinking of it, if that makes sense.
We've got
so for example,
very careful with the generalizations that we turn into beliefs that drive our behavior and everybody else's.
Yes, exactly. And also sometimes as well, I feel like, I can't remember what the word was, there's a phrase for it, but oh gosh, there's a phrase for it. You know, like when there's a self-fulfilling prophecy that belongs to a group that you identify with, and so you dive into the self-fulfilling prophecy just to save yourself the trouble of ending up that way anyway. And I find a lot of people do that.
And we, even when, you know, the point is, the psychological experiments, they've looked at people all sorts of experiments to look at whether people change their attitudes on the basis, or change their beliefs on the basis of facts. They don't do it. It just doesn't happen. So, you know, you can tell people all the facts in the world, but it doesn't change their basic beliefs. You know, until we start to actually spend time really examining how we construct those beliefs, we don't actually get the chance to actually begin to change them. Rather, the facts don't change it. The only way of doing that, or perhaps the only way of doing it, the only way I know about it, is look really carefully at how you're experiencing things, and examine how you're creating all of those reactions and behaviors and beliefs yourself.
I was just, as you were just saying that, I mean, I think one or two last thoughts. I was just thinking in terms of staffing, right? So, I mean, with me, I'm not sure how good this is, but most people that have tried to apply to work with me or tried to work with me know that I do this. I feel it's positive discrimination. I positively discriminate in the direction of people who are mindful already. So I have like interview tasks that I get people to do once, you know, they got to a certain point, and usually it will have something to, basically no matter what it is, they have to stop before they can start. And like, I'm just constantly looking for the people that stop before they start, right? Or it has to do with, there'll always also be something that has to do with like just turning up as you are, like just the bare basics. So like, there'll be a task that's like super irrelevantly, like unnecessarily challenging, and you cannot achieve it. The only way to pass this task is tell me you cannot achieve it, because people just don't know how to say anymore that I can't do it.
I tell you what, there's a brilliant activity that you can get, and that's tell people that they've got to balance an egg on its end.
And they'll never get it. They'll never do it. But you'd be surprised. Well, I mean, I guess you wouldn't be surprised, because the research is probably in. People just cannot say, I don't think I can do this.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what happened when I did that in a training once. And I went to really sort of see what this training was about. It was a one-day training, and I was a little bit suspicious of it. Anyway, this is one of the activities they asked.
Yeah.
And so I just sat there and I played with this egg, and I just thought, oh, well, I'll just get into the sensations of playing with this egg.
Yeah.
And then I'll tell you what, it stood on its end because it found a tiny little crack in the table. I thought, my God, look at that.
That was to teach you a lesson. That was the answer to saying, yeah, Mark, watch this.
Yeah, but it's like when you accept that you can't do it and you're just going to get into the experience of doing it, sometimes something crazy happens.
That's the thing. Like, I always find when I accept that I can't do something, that's usually when I'm able to creatively get it done. So that's why it's such a major thing, because I have a learning disability, and in as much as it never turns out and looks like I do, because I'm literally like a first class student. I am like the epitome of I got 100% a couple of times at university. Like I could fool anybody into thinking I was not dyslexic, but I am. Get my first drafts of the work, and sometimes I have like I'll have like staff that, you know, they're already working me now, and I'll send them something, and I dictated it, and then I didn't go back and proofread the dictations. I know it probably makes zero sense because the computer doesn't understand me. And literally, I have seen people try their best to rephrase and paraphrase something that actually was just wrong. Just wrong. Just because they'd rather do that than come back to me and say they couldn't do something. And I just find it so painful. I even say to my son, like, it's painfully polite. I call it painfully polite. When you have staff who are painfully polite, they're trying so hard not to put a single foot wrong that it's just wrong. Like, you can't work with them. Because you can't be authentically yourself. They can't be authentically their self. And we can't do this. And I feel like that's so much more important than having people that turn up with the skill. You know?
Yeah, well, it is totally, because anyone that is able to fit in socially, they'll sooner or later they'll find a useful function, and others will adapt. They'll adapt to fit that space where that person can do something that contributes to the whole. And what was I don't remember what it was. It was something else. It's about being not afraid to make a mistake. It's this risk aversion that's fused with this sense of I've got to be seen to get it right. Otherwise, I'm gonna have, you know, people are going to criticize me. And that, if that's there, it's really damaging, and we've got to find ways of undermining that socially and individually, and that's where mindfulness practice can really help. To help us to let go of that sense of self that is continually got to get it right, and then you can start to be creative, because you'll never learn if you don't have a bit of a surprise when you get it wrong. You recognize you've got it wrong, and you go, oh my God, how do I do that? Or can I get someone to help me? Or because the fear and the threat is going to stop you being able to acknowledge that it's gone wrong, and stop you even being creative and learn and be exploratory and curious to find out how to get it right.
Yeah, exactly. And it happens all the time. Even in education, I find students just, some students have, like, they put themselves in a glass cage, and rather than try, they'll ghostwrite, or they'll hire someone to do the work. And I'm like, seriously, no one can do this task for you. It's called evaluation and reflection. They cannot reflect on our conversation for you because they were not here. I will catch you every time. It's hilarious. But before we move on, I just wanted to read a couple of things. Sorry, I forget I've got the second phone. Sadia says, a very important point that Mark's just made about facts. It's true to say that people will not change their beliefs based on facts. So how do we allow people to believe facts? Or how do we help people to believe facts? I mean, I think this is a self-efficacy thing. Unless they are physically involved in the realization of that fact being actually a fact, I don't think you'd be able to convince them. I mean, the only way I managed to get my son to stop leaving the toilet seat up is because he's 17 now, and I finally fell in the toilet without the seat on, and he just felt so guilty. He just felt so guilty. Now we don't have this issue anymore in our house. But it took 16 and a half years. It happened like around Christmas, and it was cold. It was cold day, and I remember, and I was like, Tyreek, and it's like that is the only way I could get him to see it, and it's this development of that self-efficacy, being in the thing when the thing happens and occurs. Well, what would you say?
Well, what was interesting about this article that I was mentioning earlier is that people don't change when they're told facts that contradict their opinions, but when they're asked to work out from first principles how something works, then they begin to realize that they don't have a full knowledge of it. And the same principle, and then they start to be curious about it, because they realize that they don't know the facts, they don't know the mechanism. And the same principle, I think, applies to what I'm trying to talk about with social mindfulness. I mean, when we begin to try and understand what it is, how it works, we begin to be a little bit more willing to let go of what we think are the facts, which is this is me and this is what I believe and it's right because others that I associate with believe the same thing or think the same thing as true. So long as that fact challenges my sense of identity with my group that I identify with, that gives me a sense of safety and belonging, I'm just simply not going to believe it because it's too dangerous to believe, because that threatens my position and identity in this group that I identify with.
Yeah, that exactly. And it's that need to be, so in fact, this is very good because you've got a point on here in understanding our social selves with mindfulness of feelings. You've got mindless self, which I wanted to ask you about, but you also had the group mind. So I'm wondering if we're touching and getting closer to that in this conversation. And if we are, if you could segue into that in the mix of
Okay, well,
so the mindless self. What's the mindless self?
What I'm saying is, the mindless self. It's really useful. The analogy that I bring into that is, what happens when a stick falls on your tree or out of a tree on your head? Mm-hmm. Do you get angry with the tree? I mean, some people do, but that's really silly, But you go, oh, blind, you might curse, but you're not going to get angry with the tree because there's no intent there. But if someone hits you with a stick, you're going to get angry with them. And why is that? Because you construct a sense of an idea of someone else that intends to cause you harm. Now, if you begin to realize that everything that person has done to try to hurt you is really an automatic process that has resulted in their need to get into a fight with you, it ceases to be someone that is responsible for the harm that they are attempting to give you. Then you can free yourself from this sense of victim or needing to fight back. You then start to treat it as a problem of skill. How do we win this battle? How do we achieve a result that means that I'm not going to be subject to the damage that this person is trying to cause me? And at the same time, if I can, that's going to work better when I can demonstrate to them that working with them or constructively working together for a shared goal is going to be better for them too.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm talking about as the mindless self. When we begin to see that most of what we do is just completely automatic, we can begin to start breaking up this sense of it's my fault or their fault, because it's just we just make a mistake.
Sometimes it just is.
That's just the way we are. We're always getting things wrong, And part of that is and a big part of that is when we say we're right and they're wrong, or they're right and we're wrong. That's and breaking down that sense of them being right or them being a thing at all that has that agency, that they're just in a sense automatic processes, enables us to let go of that sense of self that creates the threat. I'm not saying that they are just a machine or we're just a machine, but thinking of it like that helps us to let go of that sense of self that we then need to have we need to challenge or compete with or fight with or run away from.
No, and I totally agree with that. I mean, that's again, in terms of trying to teach my son, that's one thing I've been trying to help him to understand recently, because sometimes he'll do something and he'll be like, oh, why did I do that? And I'm like, no, it happened because you weren't looking. It will always happen when you're not looking. You didn't actively do it. Don't take the credit. I'm always saying to him, don't take the credit. You don't get the credit for that mistake. That will happen if you do not look. Your mistake was not looking. The rest was just, that was going to occur. A lot of times people fail to see that, especially what I was talking about earlier in terms of managing upwards and us and people not understanding how much opportunity there is for the manipulation of power by the people who we expect to tell us, when we're right or when we're wrong. And then, they can manipulate that position of power because we don't know we know better. If that makes sense. We know we
well, it's the old
which we don't know.
It's the old thing. The divide and rule, creates a sense of threat, and then people do what they're told.
Exactly.
Basically.
Exactly.
And you know, going back a step to what we were talking about with the mindless self, we can only start to be able to understand the mindless self and let go of the threat or the sense of idea of someone harming us or someone we need to compete with, etc. When we begin to bring this sense of relatedness, which is like we're all in this same boat together. We're all like making stupid mistakes.
Yeah.
We're all doing things that end up hurting other people, and all we can really do in the end is go, is face the reality of that suffering that we cause ourselves and others, and try to bring kindness to it, and trying to find creative ways of working together. And that's when the group mind comes together.
Yes.
When we don't have those sense of competitive threats, and we can all start to function like a group mind in the same way that our own minds work. If our own minds are divided by threats, it messes us up. And the same thing happens with the group dynamics of a group working together. If there's competing interests of threats between individuals, it interferes with their ability to be adaptive, to work together as a kind of conscious whole.
So interesting. Okay, all right. So let me just say one more thing, sorry, before I forget. Cheryl said, love this to answer. So she tried to answer, I think she was talking to Sadia, but let's share it anyway. For people to believe fact is to address the varied individual segmented belief systems and values. Yeah, pretty much what you were just saying. And Sadia says, I asked the question because I'm currently trying to get people to understand good leadership. However, they're not buying it. See, that's the thing with leadership. Leadership is a hard one because you can't, I mean, again, I would say you cannot teach good leadership because by definition, the attempt to tell someone that they're a bad leader is bad leadership. Right?
Yeah, and it's
but they will not listen to you because what you're saying is bad. So now you have like removed your credibility just by questioning their capacity to lead. It's kind of like what you were saying earlier. You need to deliver the message in a way it will be understood, but doesn't affect like the status quo and the emotional softbox that person is in, because they believe that they're the leader. But this is again the thing. Yeah, go on. You can say.
In a hierarchical system, that leader is going to be more and more bound by their sense of, you know, importance as an individual, and more, vulnerable to the threat that they are not doing it right. So all you can do, a very difficult situation to do, all you can do is try and make them feel safer and ask them, you know, try and be, you know, ask questions. How do I do this? So that they get engaged in actually trying to explain what it is. Rather than tell them how to do it. How do I do this? So, you know, you're modeling what you want them to start to learn to do. You're having to be the leader from below. Yes. You can't. Yes. That's all you can do.
Yeah, you have to. I totally agree. You have to teach them how to lead you.
Yeah.
It's like a conditioning.
Yeah. By asking them questions. By asking them questions, and then going, oh, but I don't understand. That doesn't seem to make sense.
Yeah, like you said, because then unraveling it and getting them to rethink about it, they'll have to come back and be like, maybe it doesn't make sense. But at least you can remain naive and protect their self-esteem, their ego, and then just be available when they realize they were wrong and try and explain it to you as though they were always right, but you just didn't get it. I get that. I should say I get that all the time. Like as an academic, I'm around people all the time who believe they're right, and then it's like you just ask questions, and then eventually, like they get caught somewhere, and then just literally just have to pretend that you didn't notice that they just messed up, because you've got to work with them forever. And you know, like the systems that we have, these hierarchical systems, they confirm to people these false truths, right? So. The act of being promoted over a period of time, that person's now the manager. You cannot come along and explain to them that they're not a good leader because evidence says they are a good leader. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in the job or they wouldn't have been promoted. Even when they know their friend just did them a favor, even if it's nepotism, right? They believe that they can do this job. For example, my son, he's only 17, so all his jobs have come through nepotism, but every time he believes that he has got, like, and he's very good, but he constantly believes like he got this off his own back. No, you didn't, mate. I called someone, I was like, listen, my son is getting on my nerves. I need him gone for the weekend, give him a job. And then he'll go on, and like the first couple of days, it was like, I like forced him into that position. But then after he proves himself, yes. And that's the thing with leaders, is that usually they might be a little bit of a mess about how they got the job, but after enough time, they kind of embodied that role, and they now believe that this is their authentic self, even when they don't do the job well. So there's only so much you can do.
We're blind to ourselves.
Yeah.
And we have to work really hard to examine what's going on. And the more we have on, the more responsibility we think we have, the more we think we're going to mess up, the worse we get at things. It's, you know, we've got to somehow find ways of dropping that story and working with other people to come up with collective solutions.
Yes.
And it's not easy in a hierarchical system.
No, not at all. Not at all. Okay, before we finish, does anyone have anything to say, by the way? Because I'm going to wrap this in a little while. Mark, you'd never believe, but we are at an hour and a half this time round. So we don't put a time on it, but I'm just like, just wowed by the fact we've made it this far. We talked longer than this when we were just talking to each other. So we could probably go on for ages, but I do want to get towards like one of the last bits of your book. So deepening mindfulness meditation with concentration and allowing the mind to wander, living in an uncertain world. I thought it'd be good to talk about that, because again, that is something that fear and this could be first world problems, okay? But I know that one of our viewers, Benson, he is in Ghana, and before it cut off, he'd left a comment kind of saying something similar to this. So I don't think it's just first world problems, but the whole thing about living in an uncertain world is such a scary thing for a lot of people.
Big deal, yeah.
It's a huge deal. Like that, to me, that is a bigger deal than understanding different cultures. Because people can understand different cultures, but they cannot live in an uncertain world. They could not wake up in the morning and not know where this is going to be or where that is going to be. Like people need a certain amount of structure. Yeah. So what are you getting at? What are you getting at in that part of the book, and what's the tips and advice that you're offering?
Well, first of all, it's just pointing out that there are some very different elements to formal mindfulness meditation. The first one that most people are aware of is, say, concentrating on sensations of breathing, okay? But that's a concentration meditation. And the object of concentration meditation is to have a calming effect. But then there's then we have to get to a point where we feel safe and grounded and connected in the body, and let go of the effort of concentration and allow the mind to just unwrap. It produces all sorts of ideas, but it's getting to a point where we're letting go of needing to do something, and we only can do that when we are comfortable with what is uncertain. You know, when we're uncomfortable with what is uncertain, we want to do something about it. So it's very closely linked to being comfortable with just not knowing what's going to happen, except you're going to be playful and exploratory. You cannot be playful, exploratory, and creative and build positive relationships if you are frightened of uncertainty.
Exactly. So how does one, I guess, embrace the concept of uncertainty?
Well, mindfulness meditation is one method of learning to do that, and learning to stop us trying to react to the second we feel some kind of risk. Because risk is about managing uncertainty. You know, we can start to think about this more. So we've got to do something that actually enables us to train the mind to do this. Mindfulness meditation is part of it. There are other forms of, you know, exercises that you can do that are to do with, maybe, you know, positively about trying to build your positive emotions towards yourself and other people, or even a religious practice, a faith-based practice, so long as it's about trying to build faith that things work out if we don't worry about them much. It means we
Yeah.
still have responsibility, but we need to undermine that thing that needs to control our environment all the time. We have to somehow get to a point of trust, and then we can explore and play. So understanding that theoretically is useful, but we have to have a way of training the mind to do this as well. And safety in a group, learning to regulate our mind, our sort of our threat response through mindfulness meditation, and then allowing our kind of allowing things to happen in meditation is teaching us to be more comfortable with uncertainty, to be comfortable without having to solve the problem.
Exactly. That's the thing. So that's one thing I've been noticing. So it's like that desperation to answer and resolve the problem, and not being comfortable inside it. I've been finding a lot lately that in fact, actually, this is another thing I wanted to cover. How would you say mindfulness, what would you, in your perspective, do you see a relationship between mastering mindfulness and what's that thing when you bring something, manifestation? Do you think about manifestation at all? And do you think they have a thing together? Because I have a theory on it, but it's absolutely not the same way.
I think I'm a little bit hesitant about that. Broadly speaking, I could say, fine, but it's also got to be open to what might come, rather than the idea that kind of manifestation tends to imply that you can have what you manifest. And I think that's wrong. I think what it has to be is about, I've got a need here, I'm going somewhere, I've got some intention in this direction, and I'll wait till the right thing pops up. And wow, sooner or later it does. But if we were looking for it, we'd never find it. This is a beautiful example of keys, looking for keys. You can lose your keys, run all over the house, not find them, and then frustrated, sit down, have a cup of tea, put your hands in your pocket, and there the keys were. Now that's not manifesting anything. That's stopping trying to manifest something, and all of a sudden it pops into your mind, because you're all of a sudden you're actually taking notice of things, because you're not feeling that you're under some kind of threat that you need to get this problem solved. The answers are there most of the time. We only need to become aware of them, notice them, and we stop ourselves from noticing them because we're so hard trying to find them, working so hard trying to find them.
Yeah, exactly. So it's funny because that's what I was saying when I said that I have a totally different perspective of manifestation. Because for me, I feel like I get the manifestation thing. Like I get why people believe that they manifest things, because we do, right? But I feel like it's more we do from the fact that when something becomes a priority and we keep it in the back of our minds, we subconsciously work ourselves into the direction of realizing that thing because it's on our to-do list in the back of our mind.
Yeah, maybe.
Does that make sense? Rather than necessarily it being in the front. Like, for example, I don't know how to explain this. Like, for example, with my qualifications, so like the conversation I was having before, I don't think I manifested my qualifications, because I sat there and I worked very hard and I did not sleep a lot, and my poor son got it from me on any days. Yeah. Even though it's marking season, trust me, I'm not manifesting those papers being marked, right? But in a way, of course, a long time ago, I decided I wanted to be an academic, and I embraced the concept of marking and blah, 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 blah. And I feel like because that was somewhere in the back of my mind, I proactively started to begin to build a list of priorities that were focused in that direction. And so that thing was inevitable if I physically did the things I needed to do to get myself there.
And I think the key here is we've got to build a little imaginary world where everything in that actually is congruent. It doesn't fight itself.
Exactly.
It's got to be something, and then it feels right. And then the work towards it is not conflicted by distraction.
Yeah.
It becomes a natural process, and that's sort of building a sort of focus, if you like, it's building intentionality in everything that is taking little steps towards this big goal without being over obsessed by the goal itself as being a problem that we need to achieve, and just taking those steps towards that, one step at a time.
Step at a time. Yeah, perfect. Okay, I think that's a good point to end on. Did you have anything else you wanted to add? In the meantime?
Oh, there's lots of things, but you know,
I know, right?
we've got to stop somewhere. I suppose the one
okay,
thing I've got to add,
yeah,
the one thing is, in the end, I'm talking about this with a friend who's happened to be a Muslim convert and a Sufi, and we're going to run a little retreat. He wants to run a little retreat as an experiment in the summer to explore, you know, his Sufi practice and looking at mindfulness meditation practice from sort of scientific theoretical base to understand it. And you know, one thing we talked about was really important to say and he's also a doctor. He's been a GP all his life. He said, I gave an example of from actually it's a book written by a Native American healer, and you know, he does a healing ceremony for some North Americans, non-Native Americans, and someone comes up and asks him to do a healing on him, and he says, okay, so why do you want to be healed? And he says, well, the person asking for the healing says, well, I'm in a lot of pain. And he says, but I need to know what you will contribute to your community if I heal you. So that is the most important thing. It's not I need to escape pain or suffering. I need to find a way of motivating myself to do what I feel is going to be useful for the community, for my colleagues or for my family. And that then means that what I do is not conflicted by threat, because it's got a greater sense of purpose.
Yes.
That's why in the end, this whole thing about ethics and purpose and doing useful things is this thing about manifesting or intention. It's got to be framed by those things.
Yeah.
Otherwise, forget it.
Yeah.
I mean, he said, because he's a doctor, he said, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if I should ask my patients when they come to me, I've got to say, well, tell me, why should I help you? And they go, oh, well, I'm in a lot of pain. Say, yeah, but what good is that? What are you going to do positively for the community?
What are you going to do for London? What are you going to do for Brexit, mate? Are you going to solve Brexit and fix your teeth? Oh, so funny. Okay, let me not say Brexit. That's just reminded me of a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, no, that was mindful.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I think this is a perfect time to wrap.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry. The last things I just wanted to say was that so we had I Love Natural, and she said this has been a brilliant discussion to listen to, and Sadia as well said that I've enjoyed your live discussion. It's been really insightful, good education, and I will start to implement as of tomorrow when I return to school. Thank you. So I know that people from here were from all over, because I know we had a couple of Ghana. I definitely know we had South Africa, quite a few South Africans. We've got New York with Learn to Grow, and then before in there, like we had a few other East Africans on there as well. So you've done the circuit today. You've done a world tour. Also, it seems that the video might have saved, but you know, we don't have the best of luck there. And I'm going to try and save the video again today, so hopefully you'll be able to see it. If anything, we're still back here again next time round, and hopefully by then LinkedIn will have LinkedIn Live, because I've been seeing it popping up, right? So maybe we'll be able to do like a double thing. But I love Instagram, so we can just come back here whenever.
Yeah, well, it's great to chat. Great to chat.
Yes, as
and
always.
Thanks for everyone's contributions. And I must say, you know, that point that it was Cheryl that made is just totally spot on. And it's really there's a brilliant thing, a brilliant example is you know, it's a fantastic video which I'd really on YouTube really recommend people have a look at. If they search social baseline theory and a guy called James Coan, it's amazing. Anyway, on it, he's looking into the neuroscience of holding hands and pain, and anyway, the guy describing this on the YouTube video, he says, well, I could have, James Cohen's mother said, well, why are you getting such a fuss about explaining why holding hands you know, can reduce people's feeling of pain. I could have told you that. You know, his mum, he's got this great big career of looking at neuroscience and people feeling less pain when they hold hands with someone that cares for them. It's like,
yeah.
His mum said, I could have told you that.
Parents do that all the time. It's like, oh, did you hurt yourself? Yeah. Oh, does that feel better?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I'm a doctor. That's what my doctorate is in.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
So it's all about persuading people to do that. That's the challenge. You know.
Exactly. So people come together.
We're in a culture where people are told everybody, you've got to look out for yourself and fight for yourself and compete, and that's just a massive mess.
Well, like you said, it's divide and conquer. And if there's one place that works well, it works most is, you know, in the workplace. And you know, I think next time I really want us to break down the concept of leadership and how hazardous and dangerous it is to mindset and mindfulness, because I've been like, one of my bosses told me to work on a paper defining leadership, and I told him the other day, I was like, you know, I only figured out one thing. And he was like, what? I was like, across the world, across the cultures, across the dress code, the languages, there's only one thing that connects everyone, and you know what it is? It's lying. It's just lying.
Yeah.
If you know how to lie, you're professional. Because if you're sick, or if you can't be bothered to go in because you can't stand your boss, you can't phone and be like, you know what, Mark, I've just remembered I can't stand you, and therefore I'm not coming in today. That's unprofessional. But if I'm like, Mark, it's not me, keep out. That's professional. That's professional. That's the only thing that everyone shares. There's not one culture where it is professional to call your boss and tell him you just can't be bothered to come in because you don't like the look of their face. And with that in mind, then the whole culture of lying is so deep rooted into everything that it's no wonder we lie to ourselves. And we teach people to lie, and just the whole thing. So I think next time I want us to talk a little bit about that and bring that in, and you know me, I'll send you a few minutes before we get there. But thank you so much for joining me.
Pleasure. Thank you.
I'll try and share anything that comes out of this with you. Definitely some screenshots. I tried to take a few whilst we were talking, so hopefully we've got those. Yeah? Okay, perfect. Speak soon.
Take care then.
Bye. Bye.